Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Please use DJ at ArtistFirst.com. And now here they are, the very impressive duo, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Hi. I don't feel very impressive.
Okay, that's fine.
But thank you very much, Z-Man, for the
intro.
For the intro and for the undeserved compliments.
Yes.
We'll take them.
Thank you.
And welcome everybody to the post-apocalyptic version of The Soul of the Everyman.
Soul of the Everyman.
We survived. We're going to mark ourselves as safe.
Oh, yes.
From the eclipse. It's still pretty dark out there, though. No, it is not. We were among the people who saw better than 90% of the eclipse just
right. From
our backyards and places of business. And then some people did there was a lot of eclipse tourism, apocalyptic viewing. Some of that worked out, some of it didn't. There were some pretty cool pictures.
Right.
And actually we're posting one of the very coolest pictures that was posted up on the interwebs of this latest darkness of the moon. And it's very cool because it has that little, I guess it's called that diamond ring, or that the picture that they get just as the moon is starting to uncover the sun or cover the sun.
Oh, yeah, the flash.
The flash, right?
Yeah.
And it dovetailed beautifully with our topic tonight. So we went with post-apocalyptic eclipse topic.
It's a good thing.
And I'm Michael Lyons.
Yes, yes, he is. I'm Margaret.
And we are the post-apocalyptic, I can't say apocalyptic, versions of ourselves right now.
Yes, we've been shifted.
Yeah. Anyway, so tonight we're going to talk about the interplay of light and shadow, the light and the darkness, and in the context of what occurs within the psyche, soul, spirit, and being of all of us. Within all of us is the light. We are embodied emanations of source light. Period. End of story. Some of us don't look like it, but that doesn't matter. And some of us don't act like it, and that doesn't matter. And many of us are unconscious, and some of us are awakening, especially I think after this post-apocalyptic eclipse. These things are, we can talk a little bit about it, but eclipses are doorways. They're gateways. They're events which people often said that they foretold or portended to doom. But I always look at it I always take the point of view that eclipses are portents of change. And people often associate change with bad because,
humans don't want to change.
They're
very comfortable.
Comfortable, especially if you're in the unconscious state.
Right.
The comfortableness of the illusion of unchangingness, which is, if you want to talk about an illusion, the illusion of permanency is something that we all kind of entertain from time to time. But in fact, every moment of every day, the moment of now, is a moment where things change.
Well, we're creatures of habit. We enjoy our habits.
And
because of that, change is a dirty word.
It makes you have to evolve and grow and adapt. But
you have to bestir yourself outside of your comfort zone.
Exactly. But eclipses or these sort of signs in the sky also take you out of your unconscious state for a moment, and they, as Tolle says, it's like a sunrise, or it's like a beautiful open blue sky, or the vastness of the ocean. For a moment, the mind is stilled. the ego doesn't know what to do with itself. Thought is banished, and you're just in a moment of now, in awe and wonder at this phenomenon.
I think what happens is the mind is overwhelmed by the vastness of what it's perceiving, and it doesn't have a word, and it effectively is stunned in that moment where it's like,
And the opportunity when the mind is stunned, no, seriously, is that you realize that you didn't cease to be.
Right.
That at some basic, fundamental level, the consciousness continues. It is, you aren't what you think you are. You don't have to think to be. And in fact, thinking gets in the way of the realization of being. So things like this, a celestial event like an eclipse, are opportunities for true enlightenment into the sort of ego darkness, if you will. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We have a nice quote from Tolle, and we have a beautiful picture that we're going to post up on the website of this most recent eclipse. And I don't know, do we want to launch with our Tolle quote?
We can.
We love Tolle. He's the best.
Okay. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I've been talking too much already. I talk a lot.
Okay. All righty. You cannot fight against the ego and win, just as you cannot fight against darkness. The light of consciousness is all that is necessary. You are that light. Tolle.
And it's important to realize that you are that light. And the you are is just another way of saying the I am. And the I am, which most famously, probably in everybody's experience, comes directly from, God is asked in Exodus, yes. God is asked to name himself. Moses asks, "How shall I call you?" And God very famously says the beautiful poetic, "I am who am."
Mm-hmm.
And in English it sounds funny. I think probably in Aramaic or Hebrew or whatever they were speaking, it probably sounded funny. It probably sounded very, very odd.
Well, different.
But when a burning bush is talking to you, you pay attention right away. First of all, you say, "Man, oh man, this is, I take off my sandals. I'm standing upon holy ground. This is a phenomenon beyond my experience." And I'm sure in that moment, anyone, Moses, but anyone, was taken out of himself. His thought was banished, and he was in a moment of true being and in communion with Source in a very fundamental and intimate way. And interestingly enough, we actually saw a beautiful series which I would recommend to anyone by Jordan Peterson about Exodus. But in that one passage which they discussed, Moses is in a familial relationship with the creator of all things and talks to God in such a way that, you would talk to a father or to a presence that is not this amazing, all-powerful being, but someone that and say, "How shall I call you?" And this name that God takes to himself and gives to Moses is the I am. It is really, I am eternal. I am beyond all other things. I'm a presence. I'm a being. I am who am all the time.
I am undefinable in human terms.
Also true.
I believe when that state of being awestruck, because that state, and we've all felt that way in different moments in our lives. The first time you're really looking at the stars, you're awestruck, or the power of a storm, awestruck, or watching this phenomena of the eclipse, which is, you may scientifically be able to describe it and what's actually happening, but as you watch it all unfold, you're awestruck because this is not in the control of man in any way, shape, or form. You happen to be here when this event happens and unfolded in front of you. So awestruck leads to the stilling of the mind trying to explain things because there is no explanation, and allows you to step into consciousness of that immediate moment. You're just there, observing, purely observing as it all unfolds. And tapping back into that first state that you were in when you opened your eyes as an infant. Because, let's face it, you were in the dark all that time. And a lot of uncomfortableness happened as you were coming out of mom. But when you're there and then somebody slaps you and you open your eyes and cry, it's overwhelmed. You're like, oh, what is going on? And then you start taking it in. I know that with the birth of all our children, they would stop crying fairly quickly, and they would literally open their eyes and try to focus to see what was going on. And you could see them, the smell of that room was also there. And putting them on your chest, it was immediately comforting. It's like, wait, I know this. They snuggle in, and they're warm again. It's, your skin, you're feeling cold. It's like, wait a minute. I was in a very warm state before. What is going on? But it is your first real experience with this world.
And you're in a being state.
Mm-hmm. Well, you don't know enough to necessarily think. You may think, but you certainly don't have any words. That's what I find fascinating, because a lot of people believe that you must not be able to experience the world because you can't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, you're experiencing it, but you don't have the words to describe it, nor do you understand how to control your body enough to be able to speak. You're breathing on your own because that's an automatic function, thank goodness. And you're trying to begin to comprehend what is going on. So you're just purely in experience. And then back to, okay, mom.
But you're exactly right in the sense that none of those words occur to the infant. Any of us, we were all there.
Mm-hmm.
And people say there aren't any memories when you go far enough back in your experience. But that's not true, because people associate memories with words and descriptions. Mm-hmm. And those are true. Most of your memories have words and descriptions to them. But the initial experiential memories are all there. And with regression, some sort of hypnotic regression or other types of regression, you can recall them. But they have no words. Yet you were being at that moment. And as Margaret just said, your first experiential, contact with the world post-birth. Of course, you were experiencing all these things prior to and during birth. But as for that first experiential moment, opening the eyes, looking around, there are no words, but yet there's a direct, intimate contact with beings who are already in the world with you. And it silences, if you ever have the pleasure of being present at the birth of one of your children, whether you're directly involved or you're just standing there trying to keep it all together, the contact that you get when that new being opens their eyes and appears to look at you, whether there's an argument whether they can focus or not, but you can, even if they can't focus, there's a contact there. It's pure, and it's also, it takes you out of your thought. You're not sitting there trying to describe the moment to yourself or talking about, how will I communicate or how. No. That moment needs no words, and the experience takes you out of thought, and you're all in being. Your connection to this being who has just been born is direct without words. And as Margaret said, the connection to the newborn and the mother is touch and sight and smell and all the other senses. But there's a deeper connection of being between the two. And if both parents are present, between the three, that requires no thought. You just are. And those moments, interestingly enough, have a timeless quality to them. If you've been present at a birth, you can recall it intimately, clearly. It's defined. It's a moment in your mind which can be recalled nearly eidetically, nearly completely. You can say to yourself, it was sort of locked in, burned in. Why? Because you were in the moment of now, and it's a timeless moment. And that is the characteristic of these types of experiences. If a bush suddenly ignites and starts talking to you, it becomes a timeless moment that echoes 5,000 odd years down into the present day. And you can still say to yourself that the words that were used to capture the moment, and oral tradition and then written tradition, still convey the amazing awe of it, and still hold much of this intimacy and familiarity. Those words which, you could say, well, somebody just wrote them somewhere down, I am who I am, that sounds great. No. The concept was probably entirely foreign to, in essence, Bronze Age goat herders, but it was given to them being to being, transcribed orally and then written down, and comes forward to the present day as a timeless moment of now, where a being communed with another being, emanation of source to source, directly, and gave it words which are false or flawed descriptions that could be related into even the present day and say, yeah, I am who I am. It's an incredibly powerful description of something which is really beyond describing, as you said earlier.
Mm-hmm. It's the beginning of the realization that you're speaking to a being who is not relating to you as a normal human being. This is outside your realm of experience. Do you even know who you are? It's a very interesting byplay. Because when you think back to an infant's experience first time in this world, all they know at that point is, I am. Okay?
Without the words.
Yeah, and what is going on here? Because this is not me, but I am having this experience. All this is coming in. And then they fall asleep. And they have to. Because the amount of information coming in is so immense that it completely overwhelms their little bodies, and they have to sleep. I wonder, honestly, because they say that you can't recall those early memories that you've experienced But I'm wondering if it's a different part of the brain that's storing those memories. Because when we say memory, we're always on that verbal level and concepts level and being able to communicate. You have to bring it to that cognitive part of your brain. But the experience is much more primal than that. So I'm wondering if that experience is stored in the base of your brain.
Well, or a region that's just inaccessible to verbal searches. I mean,
right.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. When you go into your mind to find a bit of information, there's some very deep science in information retrieval from the brain, because no one really understands how it works. First of all, you say to yourself, what was it that I did last week? And you go into there with a query, and maybe you can't remember exactly, and then an hour later or 20 minutes later it suddenly comes to you. Well, how does that whole process work? First of all, how does one, if you think about a computer, you type in a get something, you do a Google search, okay? Everyone's familiar with that. You type in a word and it finds, it says, here's 64,000 things that are related to that word. Would you like one of them? Would you? Would you? Would you? But the mind isn't like that at all. You kind of hunt for a piece of information, but you aren't really. There's no hands inside your brain. No one really understands how the mind stores information. That's number one. And no one really understands how the mind re-accesses that information and brings it into what is the present working sort of conceptual memory thinking. Because all those memories are there. They aren't yelling at you from the filing cabinets, I'm here. And you don't necessarily know where they're stored. It isn't like you go over to this corner of your mind and then open up this drawer and then, oh gosh, I don't want to look there. Those memories are terrible. That's last Christmas, during the Christmas party. No, you don't know where those memories are, yet you can find them. So that's weird. They can come up sort of spontaneously from some sort of a trigger, or you can ask yourself, well, what did I do there? And then an hour later, it'll kind of pop and say, oh yeah, that's what I did. Well, who's looking while you're not looking? There's a lot going on in there that we really don't understand. So, Margaret, that's a very valid supposition, is that these memories, which are even before you have all this sort of cataloging system of, well, this goes there, and this is where my math test is, and this is where I understand how to, drive a car, and over here is all the memories of the Christmas party from 7 years ago. Well, none of those things were conceptualized at that moment of your birth, yet you're taking in information, and as you very rightly said, infants sleep. They sleep a lot. Well, one of the things we do during sleep is we kind of organize and clean up and categorize information. It's what the mind is doing when you're sleeping, a lot of what it's doing, and why you need to sleep. You need to go into REM sleep to kind of do that sort of housekeeping, that background task.
Clean the cache.
Clean the cache. And then the infants are taking it in like a fire hose. Every sense is wide open, no filters, and you're drinking in tremendous amounts of information without any filter or without any way of categorizing it all. And so you go, oh man, that was enough. give me a bottle and put me to sleep for an hour or two, and then I wake up and I'm like, okay, I made a little more sense out of this. Let's try it again. Well, all that process is all happening, if you will, in that non-ego present moment. So time goes on. And you gather enough of information, you gather enough of the world's way of doing things, and you start to have thoughts. You start to put it together. You start to organize it into, these things are concepts, these odd little sounds that people make, these word gestures and blinking and moving of hands that mean something. So you kind of say, well, what does it mean? well, blah, blah, blah means this, and you go, blah, blah, blah. That's close. Try it again. Blah, 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 blah. So you're getting it. And then suddenly you realize that when I say blah, 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 that means the thing over there that's bright. Oh, good.
Or, and, well, different researches that they've done, but that the infant can actually hear in the womb.
True.
And there are voices that are familiar, like your mother's voice. You hear it all the time because you're in her.
You're in her, yes.
So her voice is familiar. It's just that the clarity of it now is different because you're not surrounded by water, and the voice is not coming from internal. It's an external that your ears are picking up.
Right.
I always think about that in terms of, if mom's talking, does that mean the fluid that's around the infant is vibrating with her voice?
Sure. Why not?
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That your mother's voice is, that warmth is permeating your entire body, because at that point you're all water.
Right, you're hearing it through your bones, through your tissues, and through your ears. The other thing about the senses that you have to use at that moment, besides the hearing of the voice, you don't have any external reference. So you hear these things. You also hear and feel the heartbeat. The blood coursing by in your mother's body. That's part of your
the rhythm.
The rhythms, and one of the reasons why the ocean sounds are calming and relaxing and put people to sleep, and then these heartbeat sounds, this kind of heartbeat of 60, 80 cycles per second, per minute, is a very calming sound. Well, because those things are triggering pre-verbal, pre-thought, being state experiences and bringing you into a being state. You look at the ocean, you hear the waves, you hear that kind of susurration going back and forth of either wind or water.
Or the breathing,
Breathing, listening to your own breath.
Mm-hmm. Your mother's breath, because you're not really breathing there. You're practicing breathing, but it's still amniotic fluid that's going in and out.
Right, but you can hear, within the womb, you could certainly hear the sounds of lungs opening and closing in your mom.
Mm-hmm.
So these sounds, all of these sounds, which are reflected and replayed in many places in nature, or if you have a significant other and you're cuddling up with them and you put your head upon their chest or they put theirs on yours, and they listen to your heartbeats. It's incredibly calming. Warmth and heartbeat sounds put people to sleep. They calm them instantly. If you want to calm an infant, putting that infant to your chest and cuddling them up, onto your chest immediately calms them, because they can hear your heart. They're warm. They're cuddled. These are all things which are incredibly familiar and put them into a being state. Anyway, we've gone into this somewhat deeply, but the point is these states, the eclipse, these phenomena which put you into being state are incredibly important.
Yes. What I was going to say was, going back to the infant in the womb.
Sure.
And what senses are actually active at that point? It will be feel, because your skin is in water. You can't really see.
It's dark in there.
And, your nose, there's actually nose plugs that are there that have to be cleared out. And taste, I don't know. Maybe they do taste the fluid. Maybe that's why we like salt so much.
That's true. Yes.
And the hearing. And it just, the phrase, the very first phrase in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word. So you're in this womb, in the darkness, but you can hear your mother speaking. It's like your very first experience with this world is hearing word from your mother.
Interesting.
It's just a something that popped in. And you can equate it, again, to being in the darkness, but at that point, that word is light to you. In other words, wait, there is something there besides me.
True.
Although they say that the baby has got to learn that the mother is separate from the baby because you're surrounded by her.
That conceptualization is not there yet, but
right.
Yet I think still it would play into once you are born and you start to hear that same or very familiar tones, the same voice,
words, cadences,
and so on, and yet you make your own sounds, and then you can start to distinguish. Well, this is me, and when again this goes back to if you've been in the presence of an infant and you see them when the first time they cry. And they startle themselves because it's like, where did that come from?
Right. Well, I made that sound.
Or they touch their skin and it can startle them because I touched me. It's and that's a beginning too. But I want to kind of wrap back to our topic here because we've gone a little bit into the deepness of ego, or rather of being. What happens as we all grow, we start to layer thought on top of everything. And with that thought becomes the concept of who am I, and I am this, I am that, and you start to occlude the I am who am, which is where you begin. We all begin with being. We all are emanations of source. We all are I am who am. Then you get the you're this or you're that. You're conceptualized and in essence caged, and the arising of ego starts to bury the being. And it's really not, because it all occurs within the being, but it becomes more and more occlusion of the realization of consciousness, the awareness of I am who am. You get to the point where unconsciousness becomes your sort of daily routine. You're worrying about tomorrow. You're worrying about yesterday. You're worrying about anything else besides the present moment. And it's a form of darkness. The ego leads you into the paths of suffering. The ego leads you into the paths of all the worries, cares, concerns, distractions. The ego will take you and put you into, put itself and its energy into the pain body. Many, many, many things occlude the consciousness. And so 40, 50, 60 years go by, and you're in a very dark place. Your being is occluded, just as some parts of the world which were trying to experience this eclipse were very cloudy. You couldn't see anything. Still, the eclipse occurred above the clouds. The moment of now is always there, but you couldn't see it. You're covered up. Your experience is, and so many people went on these, Margaret, on these, very expensive and long distance trips to places where they could stay to see the eclipse, and many of them weren't able to see it. And some of them were quite disappointed and mad and upset. And, I came all this way, That's the ego. That's the pain body. That's all about suffering, about, why can't the clouds pull back and show me the eclipse? I spent all this money. These are the litany of things that were posted by many people onto the interwebs, because they couldn't see it. And they're like, these people over there got to see it. Why can't I see the eclipse? That's all the ego. Mm-hmm. And you get to the point after 50, 60, however many years, that the ego becomes such a terrible burden that you finally realize that you want to find a way out of it. You say to yourself, you have an existential crisis. What is the meaning of my life?
Well, you realize that you're quite tired of hearing yourself complain. I mean, you really have to get tired of yourself. Reach the end of yourself and you go, okay.
Yes.
Are we done now? Can we go on to something else? That's when you're open enough to say, okay, there's got to be another way for me to come to peace or fulfillment or feeling alive. Because the thing with the ego, what structures an ego? How does an ego get put together? And it has a lot to do with understanding that in that infant stage, there is so much information coming in. You have to establish a gateway or filters for information to come through. Otherwise, you would not be able to function in an organized manner, in some manner that would actually do something. Mm-hmm. In other words, you would be continually overwhelmed. And you're trying to find a way to handle this world. So the filters begin to be layered on, and it works pretty well, because then you can manage things and begin to sort of organize things. But if you stop there, just say, okay, now I can manage it. I don't need to know anything else.
Right.
I know exactly what I need, and this is it. But it closes you off to the experience that is in front of you.
Yes.
Because you have to realize that you haven't taken all of it in. You've filtered your way to the point where you can manage it. But there's been a whole bunch of things, data, experiences that you have pushed aside because you wanted to handle it.
Well, you get this relevant filter. You know, does it matter? Does it mean anything to me? You start to get this, focus. No, this is, I have to get to here and have to get to there. Things aren't going to be good until I get here. Things aren't going to be good until I get there. Oh, this happened to me. Oh, woe is me. I must do something about it. I must find somebody to blame. It all becomes sort of this internal dialogue of suffering, this internal dialogue of now is not the moment that I can live. I have to get to here. I have to get to there. Oh, all these things happened in my past. I can't overcome them. I'm able to succeed. I'm always fated to fail. I can never find love. I can never find peace. I can never find happiness. Well, I. That's all ego.
Well, that's the not letting go of the idea that you really can't control things.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe you can control things, then you're going to go back to where you were disappointed and say, okay, let me try this again this way, and then this way, and then this way. And you're not really taking a moment to still yourself and really ground in and balance yourself to open up and say, okay, what did I miss? What is the observation? And not make any judgment calls on it. Just take it in, because the minute you start doing judgment calls, meaning, well, I knew this was going to happen this way, and I know that, well, this is going to be next, and this is going to be next. It's like, no.
Mm-hmm.
You have to withhold judgment completely and observe. And that means you have to still that voice, the ego voice, because the ego voice is made up of habit patterns. So you have to stop and take yourself out of the habit of this is the next sequence of events. I've already got it down. I've written a whole treatise on this. No. What is going on? What did I miss? And just allow yourself to open, truly open. We had been sitting in one of the state parks, and there's this beautiful overlook. You could see for miles all around you. Just a beautiful vista. And another couple had come, and they were like, oh, sorry, we didn't mean to interrupt. It's like, no, there's plenty of room. Come sit, come enjoy. So the gentleman had said, "Oh, it's so beautiful, and it's so hard to try to remember all these details."
Yeah, I remember that.
And just the instruction came to him, just in conversations, like, no, let that go. Look out and just open your heart and take it in there. Feel all of that. And he did. And in that moment, he just said, I can recall this at any time and experience it again. It's like, yes, you can. You have to take the step past this idea of the way you should be experiencing the world around you. Because the way he was doing is, I'm looking over here and this is what I see. Then I look over to the east and this is what I see. And then I look down and this is what I see. It's like, no.
Right. And for each one of those directions, he was trying to describe everything and then think about writing it all down somewhere and then filing it there and then trying to figure it all out. And isn't that, and that's what people do. That's what they consider memories. It's like describing this and then trying to remember all that and describing this and trying to remember all that. And then after a while, you go, wait, wasn't that? It was this, was it? You have, instead of having the experience, all you're really doing is sitting there trying to describe the experience and write it down, in essence, in some sort of mental notepad. Right. So that then, 2 or 3 days from then, you can say, well, we went to the park and I saw a red car and then I saw a bird with a feather and then I saw 3 trees and you're not experiencing it then either. You're trying to, maybe it was 4 trees and there was 2 rocks and the one of the rocks was, and you're no longer in that moment. And you're not even when you're describing it to another person, they're not able to see it. You're not able to see it. All you can hear is the words.
Or sometimes only the pictures that they take.
And that's the other thing people do. So, is they go there and instead of experiencing the moment, they drag out their camera or their phone and start snapping pictures. And instead, what Margaret said to this gentleman, and what you should say to your own self at any particular moment, if you use, and this is Tolle, the light of consciousness. Well, what does he mean by that? There's no real light of consciousness. But in the light of consciousness is become aware that you are that light, that you are the consciousness within which the universe occurs, which has an ego. You've got one. Everyone's got one. There's a voice in everybody's head saying things, desperately jumping up and down in the corner, wanting to be noticed. But if all you can see is that, and all you try to experience the world through that ego piece of you doesn't allow you to experience. It allows you just to talk to it, and it wants to talk to itself, and then it wants to argue with itself, and then it wants to tell itself what to do, and it wants to tell itself what it did last week and what we're going to do next week, and all this lovely, and it runs around grabbing up pieces of emotion, getting mad and sad and angry, and it's tedious and exhausting. And so you end up with a bunch of pictures and some half words that say, I did this and I did that. Okay. What Margaret told the gentleman to do, and what you should do, what we all can do, is be like that infant. Open yourself to the light of consciousness. Realize that you're the light. That sitting down on a rock in the sun with a beautiful vista in front of you doesn't require you to say, I'm on a rock, the sun's out, and there's a vista, and there's 17 trees here. No, that's the ego doing all those things. You merely sit, realize, bring the light of consciousness up. It takes an instant, but you bring up your light of consciousness. You say, here I am, without the words. Just be there, without the words. And use every sense you have. You'll feel effortlessly that you're sitting on a rock, that it's warm. You'll feel effortlessly that the sun is on your face. You'll hear effortlessly every sound that's around you, all the way out to the birds and the trees. You'll see effortlessly the vista that's in front of you. You'll feel the breeze moving past your ears. You will be in the moment of now, and every one of your senses and your being state, which is beyond all of them, will just be there. And it'll be timeless. The time will stop, and the memory will be crystal written into whatever part of your, and again, these memories are, it's odd where they get stored, but that part of it, that moment, will be written in crystal somewhere, such that if you do recall it, there won't be any words. Yes, you could say, we were at the mountain together, and that experience will be there, and you could talk about it because you can bring it into your mind completely, just as you can bring into your mind completely the birth of your child or anything else where you were in the being state. The being state doesn't come in with words. It doesn't come in pieces. It doesn't come in with weird emotions or oh, if only this had happened, only that had happened, if only the flight hadn't been canceled. No, it just comes in as an experience with all of the senses that you were using at the time present in that experience and recalled in the moment of now and re-enjoyed, if you will. There's joy in that moment too, which doesn't have to be named either. The joy of the moment, the presence that you are, and the moment itself are all part of that whole experience, which is now part of your experience. It's in your eternity bank, or I always get that wrong.
No, it's true.
But those moments experienced in the now by the being are because you've brought the light of consciousness up, and you haven't destroyed the ego. You just said to the ego, just sit over there and be part of me, but don't try to describe everything. Hush. Silence yourself. Stifle. And be.
Yes. It's stopping and, as I said, open your heart. That is the instruction that came in.
Perfect words for it.
Open your heart and record what's there. Open your heart and see all around you. And it was interesting because when you do that there's a peace that comes over you. And you allow yourself just to extend past the so-called requirements that you thought you had to do. The peace, from that peace in the heart center, you realize it's always going to be there. And you just need to touch back into that state to experience it once more. You carry it with you that way. I think that's the best way to describe it. And there are many times when you're going through your day or going through your life where you're under such stress that coming back to that heart state, that peace is the only peace that you will ever actually have, no matter the turmoil that's going on around you. And just speaking from experience, I know that that is exactly what kept me sane when we were on the pediatric wards of the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. I had to refer back to the peacefulness that was stored there to recenter myself.
And it's exactly, that's very, very profound, because these experiences are a well of strength, if you will. They're a place of repose and they're a place of refuge, that you can recall them when the ego is trying to beset you with all the stress of the world. You can, in essence, bring that light of consciousness. Also reveals all of these experiential moments, which are your true being. The ego wants to put you into, it loves stress. It loves getting you all flustered and going in every direction and in reaction and in, I am angry, I am sad, I am, going to go do this and I won't be happy until that comes. And this is all the egos and the pain bodies which you can create out of them This is all the ego's happy place, because it's gathering energy, it's getting attention, it's keeping you out of the moment of now, because it's focusing you on any particular future. Doesn't really matter what it is, or any particular past. Doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it's not in the present moment of now. And people, as Tolle says, people spend their whole lives waiting to start living.
Yeah.
And isn't that a terrible, damning indictment?
Again, we go back to men living lives of quiet desperation.
Right. Thoreau, yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
And that's where the desperation rises, because the ego is not allowing the spirit of the man to be able to grow and be nourished. Usually, when you think of the sun and the moon is always looked on as, one of the bright lights in the sky, but it actually doesn't produce light on its own. It is only reflecting the light of the sun itself. So this fact is something that we just don't think about. We just think, oh, there's a light in the sky. It's like, well, no. Stars, of course, are their own source of light. And when we see planets, it's again reflected light of the sun. And the sun, at that point, is the source point of all that light. So with this past eclipse, the representation is rather interesting, because it means that there is no reflected light coming off the moon. It blocks the source light. But the moon, you can look at that as the ego. And without any source light, it's darkness. There's nothing that it can bring to the table. It's just blocking the source. But it's interesting to see that whole movement unfold, because it's not a permanent block. Temporary. It moves on. And this occurrence allows you to see that source light is where life comes from. So it's an analogy to that spirit part of you, the divine part of you, that is constant and unchanging. It just happens to be this mass. This ego came by and blocked it. And unlike an eclipse, but in many ways like an eclipse, the ego blocks the light, and it creates sort of a cold darkness, which, if you allow the ego to remain sort of being a sort of a constant eclipse, you don't have the realization of the fact that you are an emanation of source. You think that you're the ego. The ego wants to the ego, in blocking the light, also absorbs all that energy. It tries to, in essence, become what the being is. It just says, well, you are this and you are that, and you're these things, and you want to be those things, and you have to have this car, and you have to have this much money, and you have to have this kind of house, and you have to look this way, and you have to do these things. Well, that's what the unconscious behavior, which gets layered on top of the being that is you. When you were born as a being, none of that was part of you, yet you existed. The experience of birth, of being, of warmth, of all the things that we talked about before, is crystal in your being and essence. That memory can be evoked by many other things in the world, and you can feel it instantly, that a heartbeat sound, all the things that we talked about before. The ego covers all that up, those connections to those types of source memories and those types of source experiences, and doesn't let you have any more. It
It literally takes you away from every present now moment of experience with we could have gone to Vegas, and we should have done this, and we should have done that. No, it's raining. Oh, the eclipse, we can't see the eclipse. We should have gone here. We should have gone there. Oh, it's so terrible. Everything's wonderful. These people over here are having a good time, and we're not, and blah blah. This type of qualification of the moment of now tears it into shreds. It blocks all the light. Fighting against it, as Tolle says, is to just realize that you are the light of consciousness, that the ego is just a moon, that you can shove it to the side.
Well, it will move to the side.
And you can move it. You can literally say to the ego, you are not me. You are not me. You are not the being. You are just a voice. And awareness does that. Awareness puts the ego in its place, doesn't destroy it. You need an ego. You need to deal with the world, as Margaret said. You need these filters. You need these filters. The ego is a very useful thing in small doses, But if all you have is the moon blocking your light, you're sitting there in the darkness, and you don't have experiences. You just have chaos.
Well, it's a limited experience. Even the what they call the path of totality. It was more of a stripe of land that experience was, but everybody else was experiencing a completely different sun and moon event.
Yes, as we all are.
Mm-hmm. But so it is a matter of perspective at that point, where you happen to be in the situation or the experience, and then how you begin to interpret it, because of the your own filters or patterns or habits, the way you think, your mindset. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Your mindset. What is your mindset when this unfolds and it doesn't meet your expectations, or it does? It's fascinating, really.
Well, I mean, and the ego is all about expectations. So anyway, the post-apocalyptic version of the show, though, I think went pretty well.
Okay. We are in a very different reality right now.
We are in a very different reality right now. But one thing we can't do is fight against the end of the show, so we will have to accept it.
Oh, we've come to the end of our hour?
We have.
Okay.
And in the light of consciousness, we're going to accept the end of the show and realize that we will be back at another moment.
Yes. Rhythmically. All right. Well, I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.